Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the Marketing Cloud Email Specialist Bootcamp, and we are in the day 5. And today's speaker is Vicki. And you might already know Vicki. She is an excellent tutor, and she's going to teach us about the Automation Studio concepts. And firstly, we would like to thank you for your continued support and your passion to upskill. And I hope this bootcamp has been helping you in your marketing cloud upskilling journey. And I would also like to take this opportunity and thank Gilda and my co-organizer, Nazi, and also everybody who has been actively and inactively, passively supporting this bootcamp. And this bootcamp wouldn't be possible without support from many people. And the next topic is the Journey Builder concepts, and the presenter will be me. And the session timing will be 9 p.m. as usual. And I really appreciate Vicki taking time today. She is in Paris, and it's too late for her, but she extended her help, and it's been a busy day for her. I really appreciate her time and all the valuable insights that she has to share. And I would also like to tell you that Naji, it's late for her, 9 p.m. and Gilda has been joining, and I currently in India, it's 5 a.m. for me, and all of us have been putting in a lot of efforts to help you in your journey. And I really, really hope this bootcamp will be helpful to you. And so we are here in our bootcamp. We have successfully completed 4 sessions, and we are in the day 5, and we have the following sessions. The next one is on Journey Builder, and the next week, it's all about the subscriber and data management by Coyote. And later, we will look at the insights and analytics that are available in the Marketing Cloud. And important thing, we have the Ask Me Anything panel, which is scheduled on 10/27. So Corina, Jenna, Vlad, and Elliot will be joining. They'll be on the panel to answer your questions, and we will be sharing the form out soon, which you can fill out with your questions ahead of time. So you can be sure that those questions will be answered during the session. You can also ask the questions during the session, but depending on the time constraints, we may have to skip some of the questions. But if you want them definitely answered, fill out the form that we will be sharing it next session or sometime later. And the next one is by Elliot. He's going to cover all about the Einstein features, distributed management, Datorama, and many other advanced features which are introduced this year or last year. And there are a lot of questions in the exam that talks about the Einstein. And this is also an effort to cover all the advanced topics that are added to the exam. And lastly, we will have the practice test. And all the session timings are at 9 p.m. except for today's session. And so with that, I will transfer it over to you, Vicki. Take it over. So I'm gonna do this, stop my screen share.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and grab the screen share back. And thanks for joining, everybody. Go ahead and throw in the chat where you're joining from today, because we have so many people from all over the world. It's fun to see everybody getting together, no matter what time it is. And I even see some faces that are particularly glutton for punishment today and have been on training sessions with me already today. So troopers all around. So yes, we are going to be focusing on Automation Studio, and especially Automation Studio concepts as far as it goes for the email specialist exam, because Automation Studio, I would just say, is huge. There are entire books. I have a nice big packet books heading over here all around Automation Studio in an automating marketing cloud. We won't be able to do a full deep dive today, but we'll get at least a nice high level and what you'll need to know, hopefully, to be able to pass your email specialist exam. So just a quick word about myself. I know some of you on the call. I see some new names, new faces here as well. My name's Vicki Moritz-Henry. As Jayothana mentioned, I am based in France. I'm in a little village in the dead center of France, just outside of Clermont-Ferrand. So my village is known for Michelin factory, is based out of Clermont-Ferrand, the tires, the restaurants, all of that. and also surrounded by a nice chain of volcanoes. So get some hiking in. I'm a Salesforce architect and certified instructor. So I teach some of the marketing cloud courses. You might see me on free certification days as well on Trailhead. And I am part of the Marketing Champions program as well, 16 times certified and 3 times mom. So that definitely keeps me more busy than any of the other ones out there. And hopefully, this late at night, we will not see any floating heads behind me. Usually, I have to give a little disclaimer that they might pop up, but I'm hoping that everybody's down for the count tonight. So, let's hop into Email Studio, Automation Studio. So, just a little disclaimer before we get started. All of the activity definitions that I've included in the slides today are coming directly from Salesforce help documentation, because one of the best places to go for study material is going directly to the source. So why not go directly to the help documentation? And then just for the sake of our sessions and being able to really break it down, I've included all of those definitions in the slides for us to use today. So, what is Automation Studio in the first place? Well, it's what we call an ETL tool. ETL stands for Extract, Transform, and Load. And this is just one of the things that Automation Studio does and does really well. It allows us to bring all of our data into Marketing Cloud, to change it around, to transform it, to add to it, enrich, segment, whatever we'd like, and then to also load it back out. So as we're going through, really keep those 3 processes in mind. I know in my head, it helps me um, to be able to order everything and figure out what steps you would need in what order. And we can automate plenty of things. Our audience segmentation, things like our imports as well. If you have to do a weekly import every morning before a Monday morning marketing meeting or something like that, or from another system every morning you're coming in and doing the same import, we can automate it. Exporting our reports and even staging our data for journey entry. So this will hopefully feed very nicely into Jayathana's session next week when you talk about all of the journey builder concepts as well. And I've just thrown some fun things in here as well. Why do you use Automation Studio? To make your life easier. We want to be automating the daily processes that would be taking up our time as marketers. We don't want to be spending time doing a daily import if we can automate it, or segmenting our audience every day before an email goes out. We can automate that. It can make you too into a lazy marketer. So I had somebody in one of my classes say a smart marketer was the term that they had used. And it is a nicer term. I still call myself a lazy marketer. I like to automate wherever I can, whether it's on the core platform or on Marketing Cloud. And it is a marketing automation tool. So that's what we're trying to do in the first place. It also earns you a fun little Marketing Cloud superhero cape sometimes. So when we're able to save people's time and energy and allow our teams to focus on what's really important, that's when we earn our superhero capes. So that's what we're here for, is superhero capes and our certifications. So just what makes up an automation in the first place? Well, an automation is going to be made up of 4 different components. And actually, I realized that I did leave something out here. So let's just hop into our Trailhead documentation. We'll come into certifications here, and we'll have a look at what you need to know around Automation Studio for the email specialist exam, because this is the exam we're really focusing on. So you'll always want to come back here. I recommend coming back to the exam guide as often as possible when you're studying, because it really does just help you to reorient yourself. So if we scroll all the way down, we have marketing automation is a huge chunk of the exam. The exam was reweighted, I believe it was around spring, summer of this year. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Ashley, for putting that into the chat. And the weightings were changed. So if you've been studying for a while, you might notice a few differences here, but our marketing automation is going to be 26%. And that's a nice mix in between Automation Studio and Journey Builder. So a really big topic, and it goes to show how important these tools are to us at the end of the day. So given a customer scenario, we want to be able to recommend the appropriate marketing automation solution and then also build the appropriate automation studio solution as well. So that's where we're going to be spending quite a bit of time and focus today. You will notice towards the top here that a candidate for the exam should be able to build email automations in Automation Studio. However, we don't need to know how to write code. So you don't have to worry today. We'll be touching very lightly on SQL, but we won't be going into server-side JavaScript, AMP script, HTML, any of it, JavaScript. We'll leave that for a developer session. So back into the slides, back into Automation Studio. Automation Studio has 4 separate parts to it. So we're going to need to say, when do I want to start my automation in the first place? What activities are going to happen during my automation? What steps and what order so that I can arrange all of those activities together. And all of that comes into what we call our workflow in Automation Studio. So workflows can have multiple steps and you can have multiple activities in each step. So let's go ahead and demo this because I know that not everybody here may have access to a Marketing Cloud instance. So I really do like to demo as much as possible to give you a little bit of insight into the platform. And if you do have access, that's a bonus. So we'll be in Automation Studio. I did navigate there a little bit quickly, but it's nestled here under Journey Builder. And we come in and we are brought directly, actually, let's go back there. We're brought directly into the overview canvas. So this is where you'll see all of your different automations that you have built. And you'll see their progress and also their last run as well. So as you start to get some automations in here, you'll see the top 50 automations in this area. And you're also able to organize them into folder structures. So automations are something that once you get started, you might get hooked and get quite a few going very quickly. So do build out a folder structure. That's my recommendation in any part of the platform, is really organizing and putting that organizational structure in place first. So we'll go ahead and click on New Automation and come in and have our first look at Automation Studio altogether. So we have our Workflow tab. This is going to be all of our activities and our steps, our starting source, all brought together here. And you can go ahead and give your automation a name. So we can say that this is the Trailblazer automation, because we are all trailblazers today. So as we're defining our workflow, we can choose from either a schedule or a file drop. So I'll come back and do some hopping back and forth in between these slides. And let's take a look at what the schedule and file drop really means. So a schedule, we're going to have 2 different options for the schedule. We can either have what we call a run once. So this is choosing the schedule as an option, but just not scheduling anything in. That's all you have to do to turn it into a run once. And this is a really great automation type for just testing, first of all, and making sure it does what we want it to do before we schedule it in, before we start it running on a regular basis. Or also, it's a great automation for our ad hoc automation. If there's not a regular date, a regular time that we want this automation to run, we might say this is useful to have in the org. However, we don't need it to run all the time. So we can make that ad hoc and just run it when we need it. Yeah, I think everybody can see my screen here. I'm seeing the chat messages coming in, so thanks for fielding those. But yes, you do have our schedules that can run on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and pull that schedule in and see what this looks like. So we have our starting source. And once we've dragged it in, it goes for Automation Studio and Journey Builder. It's always gray when it's not defined. So just a little hint there to help us to navigate. And Afia, I see that you can't see the screen. Sometimes if you go into your toolbar and you change the view on the screen, it might be that the windows are in front of it or that the slideshow isn't showing. Awesome. So now on our schedule, we have our start date. So I can say that I'd like this to start tomorrow. Why not? And we can start it at 8 a.m. So we can have it be a run once where it'll just run that one time with a schedule in. I can leave it without a date and just do the run once manually myself. Or I can choose how often I would like it to run. And you can see that we have even more options in here than I had put into the slides. You do have hourly, so you can run this on an hourly basis if it's especially an audience segmentation that needs to be real up to date with the most recent version of our audience. We can do that. Daily, weekdays, weekly, monthly, and yearly. So we can say, I'd like this to be a daily run. And then we can decide how long this should go on for. So should it end? Never, meaning that it keeps going until we tell it to stop. And that'll be ideal for when you want to have this ongoing and not put a start date on it. You can also have it end after a certain number of occurrences. So maybe I know that this particular update or this particular segmentation that I'm going to do in this automation is only for this month. I know after 30 days, it's done. Well, rather than needing to think about coming in and turning it off, I'm a lazy marketer. I don't like to have to put things on my calendar just to remember to turn things off or clean up data. We can end it after 30 occurrences. And then we also have our end date. So for our seasonal promotions, for example, if this automation is really spurring on a seasonal campaign, I may say at the end of the season at a fixed date or at the end of the sale, I'm going to turn this automation off and I can schedule it in that end date. That way I can let it run and then forget about it. So we'll go ahead and say done here and see what this looks like. So we have a scheduled starting source and we're able to see that schedule coming in here. Now our other option is going to be our file drop. So our file drop is the one where if you've ever been on a free certification day with me or a class in general before, you will hear me have gone ping in the hope that somebody hears that on their exams and hears my voice pinging in the back of their heads. And it helps you to remember what this other starting source is called. So I make myself sound silly in the hopes that hopefully it will help at least one person. And if it does, then my goal is complete. So our file drop is that ping. Yeah, awesome. The test questions sound like a ping too. Yeah. So we've got our file drop, and our file drop is listening to a file, literally pinging onto that FTP server or wherever we're listening to. And we can either base it off of a folder that we're listening to on your FTP or on a naming convention within that folder. So let's go ahead and say, well, I've had enough of my schedule. I would like to delete this starting source and start over. We'll go ahead and drag and drop that file, drag that file drop. And once I click configure, this is where you start to see the difference between the file name pattern and no file name pattern. So you can add folders in here. These are the ones that come out of the box with the standard Marketing Cloud FTP. And I can say that I want to listen to any file that is coming into the import folder. When it gets pinged into the FTP site, then we're going to run this automation off the back of that file. The file name pattern is going to give us some more granularity. And the file name pattern we can say contains, begins with, or ends with. And then we can even do things like pull in personalization strings to say that I want it to be today's date, the month, the day, and the year. Or maybe I say that any of my file names are going to begin with Trailblazer. And this will often be maybe an API integration or some other system, or even your own internal naming conventions that are helping you to decide what the right file is to trigger this automation. Now, the automations are going to run off the back of the file. However, each file can only have one automation that runs off the back of it. And that's why this is really important to us as well, because if I say no file name pattern, and I say I want to listen to the import folder, any file that comes in will trigger this automation, which means I can't have another automation happening as well. I need to really condense all of those activities that I'm working with and everything that I want to happen into one automation. So that's going to be very important to us as we're coming about our automation studio strategy, really trying to make sure that each file matches up with one individual automation. If I use a file name pattern, this allows me to have multiple automations happening off the back of the import based off of the file name instead. And great, I see some questions coming in. So the time settings are the same as the accounts. Yes, in the starting source, you're basing it off of the accounts time settings. The only piece that is based off of another time zone is one that we'll be talking about in just a little bit, which is our data extract. And when we extract our data, then all of your data is in Central Time, so CST. Awesome. You guys are the best in the chat. So we do have Cody giving us a few extra hints here. So happy to share these slides out afterwards. And happy to have you come back and review here. But he has got us going here. So now that we've gone through our starting sources, do feel free to throw any of your questions into the chat as we're going through here as well. We'll get into some of our activities. And this is where I have split them up, hopefully in a way that makes sense, that helps us to logically dig into each one of these. So our first one's a nice, easy one. I figured I'd throw you all a softball here to get started. It's late for quite a few of us, early for others. So we'll start off nice and easy here. Send email. So sending the emails are going to be one of the activities we can do through Automation Studio. And when we think of email, we often think of automating our emails through Journey Builder. And yes, absolutely, Journey Builder will be a very powerful tool for us. Automation Studio, even if you're using Journey Builder, still has its use cases for sending emails. So large data volumes, we're talking really large data volumes here. Automation Studio does handle it better than Journey Builder does. And then also Journey Builder allows you to inject one person in at a time. And I'm not going to step too far on Jonathan's toes here and give you too much Journey Builder, but we have that one contact that's injected into the journey. And that's the person that we nurture, that we send our emails to. In Automation Studio, we can say, I want to send this email to this entire data extension, and it's the same people each and every time. So think internal notifications. If I have to notify an entire team of some sort of data change that's going on in Marketing Cloud, maybe a weekly update or anything like that that I'd like to have automated, then we can use a send email activity and use our email content with a fixed audience to be able to send that email out as well. So some cool use cases for it still. And one of the things that really helped me to realize how we can use email in Automation Studio to begin with. We also have some other types of sending depending on the channels that you're using. So this really depends on what you have activated and what you've purchased as add-on products as well, whether you're using SMS or GroupConnect messages through Mobile Studio. Just nice to know they're there right now. So the next one gets a little bit more complicated. So we went nice and easy there. We went, whew, that's easy. And now into our automated segmentation instead. So our segmentation, we have two segmentation tools that we talk about in Marketing Cloud. We talk about our filters and our queries. And we do have filtered data extensions, which are just snapshots of our data that we can see in Email Studio, in Contact Builder. We create them in Email Studio. But we can also automate our filters because those snapshots are just what the data looks like at that point in time. When we run the filter, we apply the rules. That's what that looks like. And we have to refresh it manually. I'm a lazy marketer. I don't like to refresh things manually. So I would much rather, if it's something that needs to be done on a regular basis, automate my filter through Automation Studio. Query Studio is our powerhouse tool. So filters are a nice, easy, declarative tool there, point and click. You don't need to write any code to use a filter. Our SQL queries are built on SQL, so it stands for Structured Query Language. The good news is it's a universal coding language. So you can go onto any bootcamp out there. There's some great resources. I'm sure if anybody's interested, even in the chat, others here probably have some good resources to give you. Some of my favorites are Free Code Camp, things like that. And it's going to allow us to combine data from multiple sources together. Filters are only one source. We go off of that one source and we return the filtered data. It also returns all of the different column headings on that data extension for us. And it creates the results data extension for you as well. So we're going to do a demo of that and see what all of this looks like. SQL queries, on the other hand, a powerhouse tool. We have to know technical code to be able to write them. That's really important for us on the email specialist exam because given a customer scenario, if you have a marketing team, we assume that you don't have quite the same technical knowledge that a technical team would. So if we say, given a customer scenario, the marketing team needs to be able to segment data based off of a data point. We'll go to filters first because they're our declarative tool, nice and easy to use. It's when we need more than that that we go to SQL queries, and you need to have technical resource on the team who can write SQL. So an important consideration for us in real life and on the exams. And SQL queries also allow you to access what we call system view tables. So this is where I'm going to show my very technical searching skills. So one of the best things when you're learning Marketing Cloud, a new sales tech stack, is to learn how to search. So our data view tables are going to be all of these really useful information, really juicy marketing information like our click data, our bounce data, our complaints, even forward to a friend information, all kinds of stuff in here. We've got journey in here as well. And all of this isn't visible in the user interface. It's only visible on the back end of the system, or we're able to expose it and combine it with other data through using SQL. So if we need to get to any system data, any of our bounce table data or anything like that, then we need to write SQL. And you can see that we would query the underscore bounce. So a system view table is always going to start with an underscore here. And then you can see all of the different attributes that are available to be queried. So you don't necessarily have to go that far down the coding path. For the email specialist, we're not expected to be able to write the code ourselves, but we are expected to be able to know when to knock on our friendly Marketing Cloud developer's door and get them to write some code for us instead. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Diathana. That's a good article to put in here. So let's see what this looks like. So just to bring us into another tab here, I'm going to get some nice tabs going at the top. I have created for us before the session today a little data extension so that we have some data to play with. So you can see that on this data extension, it's our Trailblazer DE. I have 9 records here, and notably all different countries. So I have Brandy hanging out with me in France. There she is. And thanks to Gilda and the Marketing Champions team for a nice little prop to use today. And then I have some of my teammates over in the United Kingdom, and then some of our trailhead characters over in the States. So we want to filter down this audience based off of the country. And I'll show you both ways of doing this. So we're able to create a filter. And to do so, we actually need to start in Email Studio. So in Email Studio, we have our data filters. And this is the only place where you can create a data filter. So I'll go to create and create it based off of that data extension that I had shown you previously. Now this is where it's nice drag and drop. Filter drag and drop tool, I can just grab the attribute, drag and drop it into my filter canvas, and then I can say that I would like the country to be the United States. Then I'll go ahead and save this as my, let's call it just our country data filter. In our data filters folder, again, you can build out a folder structure here as well. And then once that is done, we can come into Automation Studio. So I like to use the analogy of a coffee machine just because filter to me means coffee. Shows where my interest lies. And it is like a filter in a coffee machine. It's reusable, a data filter. You can use it across multiple different coffee machines. So as long as it's the right fit, as long as it's the right model, we can use it wherever we'd like. And that's what a data filter is. It's very loosely coupled here. So we're able to use it in different automations if we'd like to, in different activities even. And we'll go ahead and let's hop back into the automation, or actually we'll make a new one here. So we'll go ahead, make this a run once just by throwing our schedule in there. And then we'll drag a filter activity in for our very first step. So to define our filter activity, we'll come into choose, and then we'll create a filter activity. So this is something that you can do first if you'd like to, or you can do it on the fly. Usually when you're getting started, I recommend having all of your activities created and lined up beforehand. And that way in your automation, all you have to do is decide what happens in what order. But when you're going and creating your starting to get into things a little bit more, you can create on the fly. And this will call this our country filter activity. We choose our country data filter. And then we give our results data extension that is going to be created as soon as I save this automation a name. And I like to use the naming convention auto underscore, and then whatever the results is called. And that just allows you to see very quickly as you're glancing through all of the different data extensions that you have in your system, what's coming from where. I know that all of the auto ones are being populated by Automation Studio. Best practice is to leave a description. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that for right now, and then we'll finish. So now we've got a nice filter activity in here. And we can go ahead and save this. We'll give the automation a name. So Trailblazer Automation. And then once this is done, I can do a run once. So we can say that I'd like to run this particular activity one time. Go ahead and give it a run. And then we'll do a run now. So you could see there that I can set notifications for individuals to receive notifications if it fails, if it runs, and we'll see that it has started successfully. So now if I come back out here, I'll be able to see that Trailblazer automation with our filter activity. And actually in our other tab, let's hop back into Contact Builder, and we should be able to see our data extension created there. So let's see how quickly this runs. Sometimes I like to go faster than my computer. There it is up here at the top. We've got our auto country results. And It doesn't look like it's finished running. I've gone a little bit too quick for it, but we should get our records in here that match the United States. Now, let's see what it looks like to do a SQL instead. So I have in our data extensions here created a results data extension for us. And this is important because in SQL queries in Automation Studio, you always have to have your results data extension created first. Good to know for come exam time, by the way, that you do need to have that in order to be able to write your SQL query in the first place. In real life, you'll figure that out pretty quickly, but come exam time, you'll want to know the functionality very well to be able to answer the questions. So if we come in and say, on the next step, I'd like to choose a query activity. I've already created a query activity for us, just for the sake of time so that you didn't have to sit here watching me write code. And for this one, we've said that I'd like to bring back just the first, last name, email address, and country. I do have a subscriber key that I'm leaving off of the original data extension. Just a nice simple from the Trailblazer data extension, where the country is France. Now I can go ahead and add that in here. Up, and it's not saving right now. We'll let that be for right now. It looks like it's a little bit sluggish here, and it might just be my internet trying to do too many things at once. But we'll be able to run this query and populate that results data extension as well. So one thing about queries as well is that it does have a runtime limit. So our other activities don't have a runtime limit that you're expected to know for the exam. SQL queries do have a runtime limit of 30 minutes, which means that if we're trying to query too much data, if our filter and our results are just a huge amount of data, we're returning a huge amount of data, we may hit that 30 minutes. And to give ourselves the best possible chance of not hitting it, we separate out our queries into a step by themselves. So this is just a best practice to follow to make sure that we're trying not to hit that runtime error. And it's not like it just gives you back the data that has already been queried and then keeps on going. What Automation Studio does is it runs each step in each activity in the step at the same time. They run synchronously. So if I have two different filters in here, both filters will start at the same time. And they won't go to the next step until both activities have been completed, which means that if I get an error at any point, the automation stops. It won't keep going until I go in to fix that error. And then for our SQL queries, if we leave it by itself, then we're really giving it the best option, the best opportunity to run correctly. If it does error, it will again stop our automation, and we won't be able to move on until we go in and fix that query. So I have included some of what I've gone over in here for you, just so that you have it on the slides. You can come back in and review this. Queries are going to be based on SQL, combining multiple data sources, access the system view tables. You need to create the results bucket first so that we can throw our data into that bucket. 30-minute runtime limit. Filters, nice and easy here. One single data source. All the attributes from the data source are returned in the results data extension. And it does create the results data extension for you. So we've got two choices with our filter. It's either a filtered data extension, meaning that it's a snapshot of the data that we can refresh manually. Or when we're talking Automation Studio, we're usually using a filter activity with a data filter that needs to be created in Automation Studio first. So we've still got some stuff to go through. I know we still have some time here, so we're doing good so far. But when we're going through our automations, we've seen how we can do some of our segmentation. Automation Studio is great for staging your data as well, because Journey Builder can't handle bringing multiple sources of data together into the journey. We can only point it towards one source. So we can stage the data in Automation Studio and then inject it into a journey. The next part of Automation Studio that we're going to look like is getting the flow right. So we're going to look at a few different activities that allow us to get the timing right, make sure that each step and each activity is happening when we want it to. So we have a wait where we can say, actually, we need to pause. Let's take a break here, especially if we're sending out emails through Automation Studio, or even if we have a wait time that we're allowing another system to process things before we run the next activity. We can use that wait time for a specific duration or until a specific time. The verification is I believe a newer activity here, and maybe one of the underutilized ones. Very powerful though, because it can help us to check to make sure our data is as expected before the automation goes on. So when we're starting to talk about things like imports, where we know, okay, my import every day should have somewhere between 30 and 50K contacts or rows of data on it. And I may say, if it's outside of that range, I don't want this automation to happen. I don't want this automation to run. And we can decide what to do. Do we just send a notification and let it keep running, or do we stop the automation here if it doesn't hit our verification criteria? And also, you can use that in the other way as well. So you might have a range that you're trying to make sure that your data is within the right range there. It also could be a null factor. So if I have no data, I don't want the automation to go on. And this is one that I've had a client recently who wanted something like this, that had a email that needed to go out to a fixed audience. So Automation Studio, not Journey Builder, was the right tool for us to use. It was an internal audience. However, if there was no results coming in from the Smart Capture form that we were using on that particular day, we didn't want to send out an email with just blank rows of data in there or a blank space in the email with no point behind it. We wanted to make sure that that email was only going out if there was useful data in it. Otherwise, there's no better way to get internal people to stop reading your emails and stop looking at them if they just keep getting these blank emails. So we used a verification step to say, actually, if there's 0 rows of data on this particular data extension, don't send out the email. Stop the automation right here, and we'll wait until tomorrow and see if there's any data there tomorrow. So verification's very, very useful there. It's also about getting your data in. So this is the one that I had mentioned from the start, importing. If we're importing the same data every single day, then an import activity in Marketing Cloud is going to be very useful. And you can have your import coming in from the FTP as well. So it needs to be in a CSV format, stands for comma separated values. And with importing our data, it might even be that you have a file that you are manually importing. You need to manually gather that data each morning and put it into the system. But then you need to have 5 other things happening off the back of that data. Well, you can still use an import activity and put it into a certain folder on your FTP. And that way the data comes in and then triggers the automation where everything else can happen off the back of it. So one thing that you can be doing is bringing the data from the FTP in its CSV format into our Marketing Cloud and writing it into a data extension. Then it's in your Marketing Cloud org, and then you can start to do all of that other great stuff. You can send emails based off the back of it. You can trigger it into a journey. You can segment it. You can join it with other data. So we can start to have some fun there. All of this is pretty easy so far. Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I mentioned Smart Capture. Yeah, we don't go through that here. And I don't believe that it's on Email Specialist, but you may want to check and make sure. But it is going to be a type of form that we can create in Marketing Cloud. So far, so good. Pretty easy, right? Let's get to the big stuff. So file transfers, data extract. These are the ones that I'd say if any of the activities are going to be the confusing ones, these are the ones. So we're going to try to break it down here a little bit today. And the main reason why we consider file transfers and data extracts a bit more confusing is because they wear multiple hats. So yeah, I should probably get like a hat made or something with ping on it. I see the ping coming into the chat. But yes, our file transfers, data extracts, they wear multiple hats, they do multiple things. And that's where it starts to get confusing because a file transfer can be used to unzip and decrypt our data that's found on our FTP. And it can also be used to securely transfer our files from the secure files transfer location or the safe house to an FTP location in the first place. And then data extract is the other side of this. So file transfer helps us to bring the data in or transform it before it comes in. Data extract still does some of that transforming before the data comes in. So it can change a XML file into a CSV. Or it can be used to create a zip file that brings our data outside of the Marketing Cloud application. So we can export our data out as well. Things like send logs that we might want to bring our send log data outside of Marketing Cloud because usually that builds up very fast. Then our send logs are something that usually we want to store that data in a data lake somewhere or data warehouse because it just gets to be huge amounts here. That would be a great use case for our data extract. So these are some of the big hitters here, and we are going to break them down just a bit more. So file transfer, you can manage a file, you can unzip or decrypt. Data extract is the XML. So if it's in an XML version and we need to get it in, we need to use a data extract. If we need to unzip or decrypt a file because it's zipped, it's encrypted, we use file transfer. And then also moving a file from a safe house. So moving it into Marketing Cloud from the safe house, or data extract is getting our data out into one or more zip files. And this is where I start to talk about my high school calculus teacher. So a little bit of a tangent here. My high school calculus teacher was absolutely awesome. He was somebody that I remember to this day. Everybody in the class, I think, was the same way. And one of my friends that was in this class with me was crazy enough to become a math major in university. I did not follow her down that one. But then she told us later that he had actually taught us in that 1 year of high school calculus, 3 years of university calculus. And he had this really great way of explaining things that I don't know that it'll help, but it definitely helped us to figure out and be able to kind of get things in order, get things straight in our minds. And it was this concept of the pots on the table. So he said that mathematicians are a little bit weird, and maybe all of us are a little bit weird. And when they're cooking dinner or any meal of the day, they are going to say that I can cook anything as long as the pot is on the table. I know how to get the pot from the table onto the stove, turn the stove on, and cook dinner. It's getting everything into that pot in the first place. That's our unknown here. That's going to be the trickiest part. So as soon as I've got the pot on the table, then I'm good to go. Then I can cook dinner. For me, with Marketing Cloud, with Automation Studio, a CSV file on our FTP, pots on the table. I know how to get that into Marketing Cloud. I know how to write that into a data extension. It's going to be an import activity. So all of these other activities are really helping us to get the pot on the table. It's helping us to convert that XML file that's sitting on the FTP into a CSV file. A data extract combined with an import will get our data from an XML file into a data extension in Marketing Cloud. A encrypted file or a zip file will have a file transfer activity first in Automation Studio, and then a import activity because then it's in a CSV file format into Marketing Cloud. And then I can run SQL, I can run filters, I can do whatever I'd like once it's in Marketing Cloud. So again, that's something that you can take or leave, the analogy, pots on the table. More than happy to share it with everybody on the call here today, but hopefully that helps you to figure it out. And we do have some other ones here as well. So we have our script activity. This is going to be the one that you just need to know it's there. That way we can tell our friendly neighborhood Marketing Cloud developers that yes, you can write your server-side JavaScript and we can automate that in Automation Studio. Here you go have fun. So we don't need to write server-side JavaScript. Remember, we saw that in the exam guide altogether before. You don't need to do that. We do need to know that script activities are a thing in Automation Studio. And we can also automate our reports. So if we have a report definition saved, then we can automate that report delivery through Email Studio or through Automation Studio as well. So do throw any questions in the chat. I've been seeing a lot of awesome people here helping us to answer the questions. So thanks, especially G, you've been answering quite a few of those for us. But if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them out. Usually I start my days off with this. I'll blame it on the late hour, but there's no such thing as a silly question. So if you have this question, more than likely somebody else is thinking the same thing. Or if they're not thinking the same thing, they will be. So I know I'm the type of person who will think of my intelligent questions right before going to sleep at night or something like that. Wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh, I should have asked that. Oh, that's a good question, Fausto. So I'm not quite sure if it can handle, if we can do JSON, if there's a way around that. But yes, data extract only does the XML to CSV. So as far as I know, it doesn't handle any JSON for us. Yeah, and if it does manage to do any of that, that would be, like I said, a creative solution. We don't need to know creative solutions for the email specialist. So that's more of a good thing to look up later, but yeah, you won't need to go that far for the email specialist exam. So with our error handling in Automation Studio being such a powerful tool, we want to know when it doesn't work. So that's where our notifications come in. And we have two different tools or two different functionalities in Automation Studio that really help us with this error handling in the first place. First is setting notifications. So a notification is going to send us a message either when the run completes or when a run fails. And we're able to set that for one or more email addresses. So I like to say at least somebody else to cover you if you win the lotto and end up living on a desert island, or you get sick or go on maternity leave or whatever it is, go on extended leave, that you have somebody else there who's helping you to cover these. Just good rule of thumb there. And then we also have our advanced run once. So when I did the run once for the filter, you actually saw that advanced run once in practice because it let me select that one activity. And I did have to check the box next to it. So if you were watching closely, you might have noticed that. Otherwise, this is being recorded. You can go back and have a look as well. And we'll go and see where this is done. So this is oddly still running here. It is letting me save. There we go. I think it has completely run now. And once you've saved your automation, then you're able to set your notifications. Otherwise, you will get a message saying that down here that you can't save your notification settings until you've saved your automation. So just in case you hit that error. And usually what I'll do is I'll put myself and a couple of team members or maybe a nice team email in the runtime error skipped run. I love this add a note functionality. So just being able to say, here's the documentation you should go to look at, or come find Vicki if something goes wrong. And then the run completions as well. So run completions, complete transparency here. I usually put it on the first couple of times so that it runs, and then I take it off pretty quickly because otherwise you're going to start to get spammed each time that the automation runs. So again, it can build up pretty quickly here. And then our advanced run once is going to be allowing us to see all of our runs. We can see that we have one completed run. We've got an awesome health of our automation right now. So our success rate is 100%, go us. And our error rate is 0. And we can see that average runtime as well. And I can always reset this, especially as I'm adding different different activities into this workflow and additional steps, I may want to reset my average runtime so that it starts to recalculate with the larger workflow. And then if I do have an error, I'll see a nice big red message in here that there has been an error, and I'll be able to click into it and do that advanced run once, or I can even click run once from here. And I'm able to choose how many activities I would like to run. So for example, if we had an error on the filter and we knew that everything after the filter didn't run, then I could come in and select just the activities that hadn't yet run and rerun those. Or maybe I say, actually, there's some that are time sensitive, so they were actually picked up from the next run or another automation. So maybe I want to skip a couple of steps too. I can get very granular here. I can decide what I'd like to run and when. Is set notifications for start and runtime error and send email activity for non-errors. So the send email activity is, I use the example of an internal team, but it's not only that, it can be anybody. The client I was working for actually was a partner team that they were working with. So yeah, technically kind of external partners there instead. But the send email activity is going to be sending an email from within the flow, whereas these notifications are just letting us know what happened with this automation. Did it run okay? Did it not? If we set it for the run completion and we add our email addresses in here, every time the automation runs, we'll get a notification saying, yes, this automation has successfully completed. And otherwise, the runtime error skipped runs is just if there's an error or if you decide to skip a run, which we can do from the overview canvas. Some other fun things to play with here are the copy feature as well. So you can copy, you can duplicate here. Again, being a lazy marketer, I don't like to recreate the wheel. And these annotations are excellent. So I love to use annotations when I'm setting up a automation for a client, especially if I'm doing consultancy work or even for an internal team. If you're a marketing cloud administrator or email specialist for an end user, it's great to be able to put just a little high-level documentation directly into the workflow canvas. So really nice tool to be able to use there. And then we can delete full steps. We can leave them together. So what we can do with an automation, just to start to wrap it up here, and then we'll leave some time for questions, is we can do a run once, like we saw. We do have to activate our automation. So this automation, if we run a schedule and say, actually, let me schedule this back in, it's on pause, even if I do save this, until we activate the automation. So we can come in and say activate, and then this will be a running automation. So I won't do that now just because I am in our demo org with the partner that I work with, but I don't want Sama to have a whole bunch of things running and scratching their heads why. But you would just click that activate button and be all set and ready to go. We can also delete automations, and you can pause automations as well. So a really important thing to know with Automation Studio is that you can't edit a actively running automation. As soon as you start to make changes, it's actually going to auto flip into pause. So you will have to reactivate the journey once you have made those changes. So if it's scheduled to run and you start to make your changes, it won't run then. It will skip that run because you're in paused mode when that scheduled time comes into play, for example. And if there's no other questions, just check the chat and make sure, then it's time for a little quiz. So these questions are ones that I've made up myself, so not in any way, shape, or form actual questions that you'll see on the exam. I don't work for the certification team. And these are just based off of my knowledge of the content, things like that. So hopefully they'll give you a good feel for what you might see, but do take them as they are. So question 1 is there is an automation that imports a file, runs a query activity to join the incoming data with system click paid data, and then injects the data into the journey. The query fails. What is the result? A, the automation returns the data that was queried before the error occurred and injects that data into the journey. B, the automation stops at the query, sends a run failed notification, and no data is injected into the journey. C, the automation injects only the import data into the journey and skips the click data. D, none of the above.
We say most of the answers are B, clearly.
Yeah, I think so. We're getting a nice run in. Awesome. You're all right here. So little brandy dance, but it is indeed B. It sends that failed notification and no data is injected into the journey. So you do have to go in and do maybe a run once if you want that data to be injected in afterwards. Next on up. A marketing team needs to create a segmented audience based off criteria that is refreshed every Monday morning in order to send a Monday newsflash email. The email is being sent through Email Studio. What type of automation should the team create? A, scheduled starting source with a filter activity. B, scheduled starting source with a query activity. C, file drop starting source with a filter activity. D, file starting source with a query activity. And I'm seeing the same thing again, whole lot of A's. And you've
So
all
it's
got it here.
clear. Yeah, it's clear, Vicki, that what you shared here in this session, everybody was able to follow. So clear from the answers.
That is great to see. Might be a little bit skewed here because I was writing the questions after writing the content, but yeah, it's good to see that everybody, hopefully it's clicking. Question 3, a marketer needs to make an update to a running automation. How should he, she, or they go about doing so? A, stop the previous automation, clone the original automation and make the changes in the cloned version. Activate the cloned version when the changes are made. B, create a new version of the running automation, make the changes in the new version and activate. C, make the changes in the running automation. They will automatically be taken into account for the next run. D, pause the active automation, make the necessary changes, reactivate the paused automation. Cool. This one as well. Awesome. So it is going to be D. We have to pause the automation and then remember to reactivate it when you're done. I've done that before, gone away and not reactivated it. Do remember to do so. Learn from my mistakes. So we have Alicia's avocados. I was writing this late at night and used my daughter's name and some alliteration here. Alicia's avocados needs to run a daily import when their point of sale system or POS system places a zip file that lands in the FTP folder. The data is then joined with bounce data to be injected into the journey. What does that look like? And because of the list format here, I'll let you read through all of the 4 answers there to choose the right one.
And here's where it's a little bit confusing what to use first, data extract or the file transfer. So it differs for importing and for exporting. It's very important to know the order of these activities. And I see varied answers.
Yeah, I do. And this one I threw in as a hardball question. So if everybody doesn't get it right here, almost expected at this point. That's why it's here. I'd rather you get the hardball questions from me than getting them on the exam and not being prepared. So yes. So you are going to see different options based off of the starting source. So we're in between scheduled and filed. You can start to use some process of elimination for these types of answers. So the fact that it's a daily import, when the POS system places the zip file in the FTP folder, we don't know what time of day that zip file is going to come in. So this is a trick question here. It's actually going to be a file drop starting source because we're waiting for the file to be ready. We don't know if it's going to be at 3 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. in the morning. It might differ depending on the data that's there, how long this other system, the POS system, takes to process everything. So even the fact that the daily import is in there is meant to throw you off. It is going to be a file drop. So there we go. We've started to narrow it down in between B and C here. And then we start to look at the other criteria in this question. This is going to be a zip file. A zip file, this is where it really helps to know the difference between file transfer and data extract as far as what they do. A file transfer is decrypting or unzipping our data, whereas data extract is transferring it from a XML version into a CSV. It's a zip file, we need a file transfer. Then pots on the table, we've got our import activity. And then I did throw the query and filter in here to give you a little bit more too, because we have our bounce data coming in. Bounce data that's in our system view tables, those what I like to call imaginary tables sitting in the back of the system. They do exist, but if you don't see them, they're not real, right? And that means that we need a query activity, and then we'll have that journey entry source. So a great example of really staging all of our data, walking through all of these different steps, and then injecting that perfect target audience into our journey. So we've got C here. Yeah, after getting all of those different mixed answers, I was absolutely expecting that one. I think I might have been disappointed if question 4, everybody got it right off the top of it. No, not disappointed. I would have been impressed.
This is
So,
a great question. Thank you.
yeah. And then last question here for you. So not quite as hard, not quite as trick question, but Lucy's Lollipops, again, fun with alliteration to my kids' names, needs to segment an audience on an ad hoc basis for a batch send. They only use the target audience 3 or 4 times a year max. Which tool should they use? Spencer, I see your question as well. The file transfer, isn't it sending files across network, and data extract is taking the data within and uncompressed and taking the files out like a zip? Yes. So file transfer is bringing data in, data extract is bringing it out. But remember, both of those wear different hats. So they do multiple things. You can have 2 file transfers, one after the other. If we're moving data in from a safe house and then maybe it's in a zipped format or something like that, then we're unzipping it. It could be another file transfer, and then we're importing it in. So remember that those two different types, data extracts and file transfers, they do multiple different things. So it's knowing all of those different hats, and that's where the exam gets a little bit tricky as well. Well, so I'm seeing a little mix in between B's and D's, especially in the chats, it looks like. And here, another bit of a tricky question just to get us to think across the different functionality, because the exam isn't just going to say, okay, here we talked about emails, Automation Studio today. I'm just going to give you Automation Studio answers. This one's actually our filter data extension in Email Studio. So the fact that it's ad hoc means that it doesn't need to be automated in Automation Studio. So part of a powerhouse tool like Automation Studio is also knowing when not to use it. So that's what this question is really trying to get us to think through, is when not to use Automation Studio. If it's just ad hoc and it's used for a batch send 3-4 times a year, I wouldn't put that into Automation Studio. I would let that be our nice snapshot that I do a manual refresh right before I send those 3 or 4 times a year. Awesome. And I have left a little bit of time, so feel free to throw your questions into the chat. But for those of you who do have to go along in your busy days, or who it's getting too late, falling asleep, that's perfectly understandable too. Here's my little bit of encouragement for all of you. So I like some cheesy motivation to get you going, and you can do it. You guys are all doing a great job. We saw from the answers in here already, you were getting those answers right. Even the hardball questions I was throwing at you, a whole lot of you are getting them right in there. So you've got this. And thank you all for sticking through it, for joining whatever time zone you were in. And looking forward to seeing all of you passing your exams. Feel free to share and to connect. I think I put my social information on the first one, but if you want to connect with me afterwards, Twitter, LinkedIn, those are my 2 channels that I respond to on the most.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Vicki. Yeah. So this is very much informative and easy to understand if somebody is new to Marketing Cloud and learning the Automation Studio. Clear. Thank you very much for putting in all the efforts. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And we do have a session tomorrow that's at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's on the implementation series. This is a very interesting session. It is about authenticating the cloud pages using Okta. So there will be a detailed demo and also a detailed coverage of all the steps that are included, including the code as well. Be sure to register. I have put the link in the chat window, and I hope to see you again in the next session. The next session is on Journey Builder, the Thursday, 9 p.m. See you again. Take care. Thanks, Vicki.
Thanks. And I do see a question in the chat as well around how to learn if you don't have Marketing Cloud. I know that's a big question out there. And I did just want to throw up with Trailhead, there is going to be a bootcamp for new marketers as well. And there will be a Marketing Cloud org with that one. So if you're looking, look for under Trailhead Academy on your Learn tab in Trailhead, and you'll see the Trailhead Virtual Bootcamp there. So
Excellent.
Just one source to get some hands-on experience, because that's really hard to do.
And I think the access will be there for a month or so. So people will have time to practice everything.
60 days normally. Yeah,
wow.
60.
That's nice. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. And thanks everyone. Talk to you again.
Look out for the homework that's coming up, you guys. I'll have the homework coming. So I'll send it out to you guys in the resources and homework Slack channels.
Awesome. Thanks, Nazi.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for joining.